It's no secret that Mauricio Umansky and Paul P.K. Kemsley have endured major life changes over the past 2 years. But one thing that hasn't changed is their bromance. This was further proven on Monday, August 4, when the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills dads came together in West Hollywood. According to Briefing on Bravo, the duo was spotted leaving Craig's restaurant on Melrose Avenue, presumably after having dinner together. Paparazzi photos showed Mauricio exiting the eatery while rocking a green zip-up jacket, a plain white t-shirt, and a pair of jeans. PK was just a few steps behind, wearing a navy blue bomber, a gray tee, and black track pants. It's unclear if the dinner was for a special occasion or simply another casual catch-up between the BFFs. Kyle Richards addresses Mauricio Umansky and PK Kemsley's bromance. PK really makes Mal laugh and vice versa, Mauricio's estranged wife, Kyle Richards, said in a 2021 episode of The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills after show. They just have this sort of bromance now that people like watching and PK loves to put on his Instagram. Although their friendship goes back at least a decade, Mauricio and PK became much closer after their respective marital splits. In 2023, Mauricio and Kyle confirmed they had separated after 27 years of marriage. PK and Dorit Kemsley confirmed their split less than a year later, just months after celebrating their 9th wedding anniversary. Over the past year, Mauricio and PK have shared frequent peeks at their headline-grabbing get-togethers, which have included everything from fun-filled birthday celebrations and guys trips to more serious matters, like when PK visited Mauricio after a serious skiing accident. Mauricio Umansky and PK Kemsley reflect on their friendship amid their marital splits. The Beverly Hills dads spoke about their bond during a joint 2024 appearance on Bravo's Hot Mic podcast, explaining how their family changes ultimately strengthened their friendship. We've been going both through separations, relationship issues in different ways, but we have both been going through that, Mauricio told host/producer Alex Baskin. And so that has given us also an opportunity, by both of us also being on the show, to share things with each other that we would never be able to share with others, just because they wouldn't understand it. And so that has brought our friendship even closer. PK agreed. I think that's right, he said. I think there's a level of trust that Mal and I have, that we can talk about anything, knowing that it's not going to be repeated. The bromance at Craig's. The soft, warm glow of the West Hollywood night was a familiar blanket, but it felt different to Mauricio. It had changed in a way that he couldn't quite put his finger on, just like the world around him. A year ago, a week ago, even yesterday, the light seemed to land on him differently. He saw himself now as an object in a shifting landscape, not the stable ground itself. Tonight, however, the glow from inside Craig's felt warm and steady. He was settled in a corner booth, the kind that offered a semblance of privacy, while still placing him squarely in the thick of things. The waiter, a young man who looked like he'd just stepped off a movie set, discreetly topped off his water glass and vanished. Across from him, Paul P.K. Kemsley was deep into a story about a misadventure with a new tech gadget he'd bought, his hands gesturing emphatically as he described the device's many failures. It was supposed to simplify my life, Mauricio, not make me want to throw it into the Pacific. PK exclaimed, a theatrical groan escaping him. I spent a solid hour just trying to pair it with my phone. I gave up and put it in a drawer. He paused, took a sip of his cocktail, and his face broke into a familiar, mischievous grin. That's where it'll stay, a monument to my foolishness. Mauricio laughed, a deep, genuine sound that felt like it had been locked away for a little while. PK's ability to find comedy in the mundane, and often at his own expense, was a kind of magic. It was a language Mauricio understood and desperately needed. For all the complexity and emotional weight of his own life, a simple, absurd story about a failed gadget was a welcome, perfect diversion. Kyle was right, he thought. PK really did make him laugh. The banter continued through the appetizers and into the main courses. They talked about business, about mutual acquaintances, and about the sheer absurdity of their public lives. They were two men who had lived very full, very public lives, and now found themselves navigating new, uncharted waters, both professionally and personally. The conversation, like the tide, eventually turned to the past year. It was a shared current that ran beneath their jokes and small talk. "It's been a bit of a ride, hasn't it?" Mauricio said, a quiet reflection in his voice as he looked at the half-eaten steak on his plate. He wasn't fishing for sympathy. He was stating a fact that they both knew to be true. PK nodded slowly, the mirth on his face giving way to a more serious expression. "A roller coaster, mate, with a few unexpected drops and loops. But the view from the top is a bit clearer, you know." Mauricio met his gaze. "It is. It's a different kind of clear. You see the whole park from up there, not just the one ride you were on." There was a comfortable silence then, a quiet moment of mutual understanding that didn't need words. They had both been through the separation, the public scrutiny, the emotional upheaval of ending a chapter that they thought would never close. And because they were both on the show, as they referred to their shared reality TV world, they had a unique vantage point. They could talk to each other about things that no one else could ever truly grasp, the strange blend of real heartbreak and performative celebrity. As Mauricio told the podcast host, it was a trust that made their friendship even closer. It was in moments like these that the trust was most palpable, a silent acknowledgement that they were not alone in their experience. PK leaned forward, his voice a low rumble. "You know, I remember when I came to see you after that skiing accident. I was a bit of a wreck myself at the time, but you looked at me, lying there, and you said something that just clicked. You said we had to keep moving, just in a different direction. It was simple, but it stuck with me." "And you were there," Mauricio replied, his voice just as soft. "Just there. You didn't ask a million questions or offer a million platitudes. You just were there. That means more than anything." PK raised his glass, this time with a different kind of solemnity. "To that then, to being there." Mauricio clinked his glass against PK's. "To that." The conversation lightened again, but with a new depth. They had gone beyond the surface, beyond the jokes, and had a brief, meaningful moment of shared vulnerability. This was the core of the bromance, the unshakable trust that their confidences would be held sacred. The dinner eventually came to a close. As the waiter brought the check, Mauricio and PK donned their jackets. Mauricio in his green zip-up, PK in his navy bomber. They walked out of the restaurant into the flashbulb-lit night. The paparazzi, a constant presence, descended, their cameras clicking like cicadas. The men didn't flinch. They were a practiced pair. Mauricio exited first, PK a few steps behind, their faces serene. The photos would show two men in jackets and jeans, leaving a fancy restaurant, but they would never capture the true essence of the moment. They wouldn't see the silent pact, the shared understanding, or the deep, enduring friendship that had been forged in the fire of their shared experiences. As they parted ways, Mauricio gave PK a firm handshake and a clap on the shoulder. "Until next time, my friend." "Until next time," PK said with a nod. Walking to his car, Mauricio felt the familiar West Hollywood night air, but it wasn't a blanket anymore. It was a new wind, and for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face it. With a smile on his face, he got into his car and drove off, knowing that some things, like the bonds of true friendship, don't change, even when everything else does. PK watched Mauricio drive away, the taillights disappearing into the stream of traffic on Melrose. He pulled his own phone out, but instead of checking for notifications, he simply held it in his hand, feeling its cool weight. It was easy to get caught up in the hustle, the noise, the endless digital chatter. But tonight, that all seemed to fade into the background. The dinner had been more than a meal. It had been a reaffirmation. He thought back to the conversation, the quiet moments of shared understanding. He and Mauricio were in a club of two, a brotherhood forged in a unique kind of fire. They spoke a language only they understood, one that combined the pressures of reality television with the very real pain of private life. The trust was absolute. It was a simple, powerful thing, and in the grand, chaotic design of his life, it felt like the most stable thing he had. He tucked his phone back into his pocket, a small smile on his face, and walked toward his own car, ready for whatever new maps and walks lay ahead.